So what if the ancient curses you read about in the Bible or the Quran aren't just, colorful metaphors for bad luck or divine anger?
Right. What if they're actual physical things?
Exactly. What if they are literal descriptions of a genetic and spiritual quarantine? Today, we are stepping into a text that claims a specific hidden lineage of humans has been operating on a severed, darkened frequency since the very dawn of history.
Yeah, it's a wild concept.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're taking everything you thought you knew about these ancient narratives, the warnings, the parables, the fallen angels, and looking at them through a lens that completely dismantles the default setting of human history.
It really is a profound shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Because, we default to the symbolic when we read ancient texts.
Right.
It's intellectually comfortable for us.
Right, it's safer.
Exactly. We treat things like bad trees or encased hearts as just poetic ways to describe immoral behavior. But the work we are examining today treats these scriptures as literal forensic blueprints of reality. We are unpacking a highly intricate, genuinely paradigm-shifting body of work by Dr. Khaled Waleed.
Specifically his text title, The Iblis Devilish Curse.
Yes.
And the mission of today's deep dive is to meticulously unpack Dr. Waleed's comprehensive and highly unconventional reinterpretation of ancient scriptures, cosmic history, and basically origins of human corruption.
And it's a massive undertaking.
It really is. We are going to explore how he uses a unique framework combining theology, genealogy, ancient linguistics, and what he calls the physics of decoupling to decode these texts. But before we get into the mechanics of his theory, we need to make something incredibly clear to you, the listener.
Yeah, an essential piece of housekeeping here. The material we are covering today involves deeply revisionist and potentially sensitive interpretations of the texts and histories of major world religions.
Specifically Islam, Christianity, and Judaism.
Right. We want to explicitly state that as your hosts, we are not endorsing, validating, or taking sides on any of these religious, historical, or theological claims. We are acting strictly as impartial guides today.
We're just the messengers.
Right. Our only job today is to help you understand the specific theories, the textual analysis, and the unique discoveries that are entirely attributed to Dr. Khaled Waleed in his text. We are exploring the architecture of his argument, nothing more, nothing less.
We are just examining how he connects his findings across different epochs and texts, regardless of how controversially they depart from traditional Orthodox consensus.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the very first structural pillar of Dr. Waleed's work targets our tendency to view these texts as poetry. He points out that what we have been reading for centuries as allegories like, ancient curses are actually literal physical barriers.
At the core of it, yeah.
So to grasp anything in his book, we first have to understand what he means when he completely redefines the word curse. And that redefinition is really the fulcrum of his entire thesis. In the popular imagination, a curse is punitive magic, right?
Like a spell.
Exactly. It's a divine being pointing a finger from the clouds and declaring a punishment, or a mystic whispering an incantation. It's viewed as an external action imposed upon a subject.
Somebody did something bad, so now they're cursed.
Right. But Dr. Waleed strips away that magical thinking completely. He looks at the root linguistics of the ancient Arabic and Hebrew texts, particularly the concept of lana in Arabic, which traditionally means expulsion or banishment.
Okay.
But Dr. Waleed frames it mechanically. He describes it as a state of decoupling.
Decoupling. I mean, that sounds more like engineering than theology.
Because in his framework, it is a structural reality. It's not a spell. According to his analysis, a curse is a physical and spiritual separation. It's a literal disconnection from the source of divine light.
So it's an active severing of a connection.
Exactly. It is not just a change in legal standing before a deity. It is a fundamental change in state. The entity subjected to this quote-unquote curse is actively stripped of the divine resonance that connects all living things to the Creator.
Okay, I want to visualize this correctly, but I want to avoid those cheap, outdated computer metaphors we usually fall back on.
Right.
Like, if we aren't talking about a severed fiber optic cable, how does Dr. Waleed describe this disconnection physically?
Well, think of it through the physics of acoustic resonance.
Okay.
Imagine the divine source as a massive, continuous, perfect frequency, a vibration that gives structure and life to everything.
Like a hum in a room.
Yeah, exactly. An uncorrupted, pure creation, what Dr. Waleed calls the Adamic creation, is like a perfectly calibrated tuning fork. It naturally hums in sympathy with that divine frequency.
Because it's built to receive that exact pitch.
Right. Now, the curse of decoupling isn't the source stopping its vibration. God doesn't stop humming.
So the signal is still there.
Always. The decoupling is the tuning fork actively dampening its own times. It alters its own physical structure so that it can no longer resonate with the source.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It plunges itself into acoustic darkness. It's a completely deadened state.
So it fundamentally isolates itself from the harmony of the room. It's cutting off its own receiver.
Exactly.
And the foundational event of this decoupling, according to his text, revolves around the figure of Iblis. Now, traditionally, Iblis, who is often equated with Satan or Lucifer, is viewed as a rebellious jinn or a fallen male angel who refused a divine order.
That's the standard narrative, yes.
But Dr. Waleed's translation leads him somewhere radically different.
It does. He defines Iblis specifically as a rebellious female entity.
A female entity. I mean, that right there is a massive departure from standard historical narratives across nearly all the Abrahamic faiths. How does he arrive at that?
He looks incredibly closely at the linguistic gender markers in the original texts.
Like the grammar itself.
Yeah, the grammar and the specific verbs associated with her actions, which he argues have been, mistranslated or smoothed over by later patriarchal interpretations.
Okay, so a fallen female angel.
Right. He identifies her as a fallen angel who arrogantly refused to bow to the new Adamic human creation. But what's really fascinating here is the mechanism of her rebellion.
It wasn't just a simple no.
Far from it. It wasn't just a stubborn refusal. According to Dr. Waleed, Iblis fundamentally weaponized divine knowledge. She took the energetic knowledge of creation and inverted it into what he calls demonic magic.
Wait, how exactly do you weaponize divine knowledge? Like, what does that mean in the context of resonance and frequencies?
Well, Dr. Waleed points to specific phrasing in the Quranic text, particularly the repeated accusation of changing words from their places or altering the creation of God.
Changing words from their places.
Yeah. In his view, the words aren't just vocabulary. They are the fundamental energetic blueprints, the divine codes that maintain the harmony of the universe.
Like the actual physics of reality.
Exactly. Iblis understood this underlying architecture. Her rebellion involved deliberately twisting those energetic blueprints, creating a destructive interference pattern.
So she built a jammer.
Yes. By altering the fundamental laws of how things connect, she created an alternative decoupled reality. She built a dampening field.
So the original disease isn't a moral failing. The disease is this static, this alternative deadened frequency.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Dr. Waleed is establishing the mechanics of transmission here. If the original curse is this state of energetic decoupling initiated by Iblis, then anyone who aligns with her essentially tunes into that exact same dead frequency.
They sync up with the static.
Right. They adopt her state of decoupling. They actively stop their own resonance. This makes the curse contagious, but not biologically, initially at least. It is contagious through alignment.
Wow.
You tune into the static, and you lose the signal of divine light.
You know, if you are listening to this, imagine how your perception of human history shifts. If we view evil not as an abstract philosophical debate, but as a literal inherited disconnection from a broader cosmic reality.
It changes everything.
It's like tracking the history of a profound sensory deprivation, a deliberate spiritual quarantine from the divine network.
And exploring how that condition entered the human bloodline brings us directly to the most controversial and startling discovery in Dr. Waleed's entire body of work.
Because someone had to be first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If Iblis was the initial cosmic entity to decouple, Dr. Waleed poses a critical question. Who was the first human to cross that line? Who brought that active, dampening frequency into the earthly domain?
Here's where it's really interesting, because Dr. Waleed's answer fundamentally targets one of the most prominent names in all of Abrahamic history. He completely redefines the figure of Israel.
Yes, he does.
Now, to be crystal clear for the listener, we are talking about the historical, scriptural figure, the individual named Israel, whom traditional narratives definitively identify as Jacob, the honorable patriarch of the 12 tribes.
Right. The standard theological consensus across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is virtually unanimous on this point. Israel is viewed as a prophet, a righteous patriarch who wrestled with a divine force and prevailed, thereby earning the name.
Wait. So Dr. Waleed is asking us to believe that thousands of years of rabbinical, Christian, and Islamic scholarship just collectively missed the fact that Israel wasn't Jacob.
Essentially, yes.
I mean, how does he possibly justify ignoring mountains of historical and textual consensus? That requires massive textual evidence.
He justifies it through a strict, uncompromising methodology of literalism applied directly to the Arabic Quranic text. He strips away centuries of secondary commentaries, the tafsir, which he argues conflated separate figures to make the narrative neater.
So he's saying they combine two people into one.
Right. Dr. Waleed posits that Israel was a completely separate, highly ancient earthly creature. He was a prophet who existed long before the time frames we usually associate with biblical history, long before the patriarch Jacob.
Okay.
In fact, Dr. Waleed establishes a firm rule in his translation matrix. There is no Adam before Adam and no Israel before Israel.
Meaning, these aren't just honorific titles passed down to different guys. He is treating them as singular, specific, historical, patient zeros.
That's a great way to put it.
Adam is the anchor for pure creation, and Israel is the anchor for something else entirely.
Precisely. And Dr. Waleed asserts that this ancient figure, Israel, was initially chosen. He received immense divine revelations. Dr. Waleed links him to the concept of being taken on a night journey and Isra, which implies he was given direct access to the highest cosmic truths.
So he was dialed in.
Completely. He was fully resonating with the divine frequency.
But the tragedy of Dr. Waleed's narrative is that Israel didn't maintain that resonance.
No, he didn't. According to Dr. Waleed's analysis, Israel actively detached. He experienced the highest truths, but he voluntarily decoupled from those revelations.
He chose the static.
Yes, he chose to cling to the earth, to follow his own base desires. He stopped his own tuning fork from vibrating, preferring to become a master of the static rather than a servant of the harmony.
I know there is a specific parable you noted in the source material that Dr. Waleed uses to identify this figure, the parable of the panting dog.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through how he connects that to Israel?
Yeah, so in the Quran, there is a profound parable about a man to whom God gave his signs, his divine revelations. But the man detached himself from them. Consequently, Satan pursued him, and the man became a follower of the darkness.
Okay.
The text famously compares this man to a dog. If you attack it, it pants, and if you leave it alone, it still pants.
It's just always panting.
Exactly. Traditional commentators usually suggest this refers to a generic greedy scholar, or sometimes a specific historical figure like Balaam. But Dr. Waleed applies his linguistic framework and concludes this is the exact historical footprint of the figure named Israel.
Why the panting, though? Like, what does that biologically or spiritually represent in this physics of decoupling?
Dr. Waleed interprets this panting as the eternal physical state of the decoupled soul. It is profound existential exhaustion.
Exhaustion from being disconnected.
Exactly. Having known the absolute peace and sustenance of the divine connection, and having willfully severed it, this figure is left in a state of perpetual, unquenchable thirst. He is grounded, earthbound, eternally seeking satisfaction in the material world because he can no longer draw energy from the divine frequency.
He's cut off his own power supply.
Right. He is constantly gasping for spiritual oxygen he can no longer process.
But, I mean, how does one earthly figure, even a fallen prophet, rewrite the software of human morality? A guy making a bad decision for himself is one thing, but how does Dr. Waleed argue Israel became the originator of a human curse? What were the actual mechanics of his betrayal?
Well, Israel didn't just walk away. He actively sabotaged the architectural blueprint he left behind.
He broke this system.
Yes. Remember how Iblis weaponized divine knowledge by changing words from their places? Israel replicated that exact demonic magic on the human plane. Dr. Waleed's research claims that Israel systematically dismantled ancient divine laws that had existed since the dawn of humanity.
He specifically targets dietary and reproductive laws, right? But, I mean, why those? Why not laws about murder or theft?
Because in Dr. Waleed's framework, dietary and reproductive parameters aren't arbitrary moral tests. They are the physical, biological requirement for maintaining resonance with the divine light.
Wait, really? The physical food?
Yes. Think of the human body in this theory as an incredibly delicate receiver. The food you consume alters your internal chemistry, your biological harmonics. And the reproductive laws dictate how the physical vessel is cast down, ensuring the genetic receiver remains capable of holding the divine frequency.
That is wild.
According to Dr. Waleed, there were 11 ancient divine dietary prohibitions and 13 reproductive prohibitions designed strictly to protect the human gusle.
So by altering these specific laws, Israel wasn't just saying, hey, you can eat pork now, it's fine. He was biologically retuning his followers.
Exactly. He created a substitute demonic religion that inverted reality. He made the pure, resonant things forbidden and the impure, dampening things permissible.
He flipped the script entirely.
He did. By intervening in the laws of consumption and reproduction, he was literally altering the physical and genetic trajectory of anyone who followed him. He became the first human polytheist.
Not by worshiping a statue.
Right? Not by carving a statue of wood or stone, but by elevating his own fabricated laws above the divine laws. In doing so, he aligned his earthly followers perfectly with Iblis's decoupled frequency.
Okay, so if Israel successfully hacked these biological and spiritual laws, that corruption wouldn't just vanish when he died, it would be inherited.
That's the terrifying part, yeah.
A new physical vessel, built on corrupted blueprints, would produce corrupted offspring. So how does Dr. Waleed trace the fallout of that initial infection in the generations that followed?
That leads us to one of the most haunting and central concepts in Dr. Waleed's work. It's what he calls the cursed tree.
Again, the cursed tree is a term we normally just kind of gloss over. In Islamic tradition, it's often associated with the tree of Zaqqum, right? A literal, physical tree growing in the fires of hell, producing bitter fruit for the damned. It is usually seen as a futuristic punishment.
Yes, that's the standard view.
But Dr. Waleed completely rejects that otherworldly afterlife interpretation, doesn't he?
He does. He brings it crashing down to earth. He reinterprets a crucial event in the life of Prophet Muhammad. The texts speak of a vision granted to the prophet. Traditionalists often interpret this as a dream or as part of the night journey where the prophet was shown glimpses of heaven and hell.
Right.
Dr. Waleed, applying his literalist lens, argues that this was a profound covenantal revelation occurring in waking reality. God was pulling back the veil of human history to expose a hidden, horrifying operation taking place right here on the ground.
The vision was of this cursed tree, but Dr. Waleed defines this not as a botanical plant, but as a genealogical reality.
It is a family tree, specifically the physical historical lineage of this decoupled prophet, Israel. The Quran states this vision was a trial for the people.
A trial because it's hard to believe.
Because the truth is utterly terrifying to human sensibilities. The revelation was the existence of a lineage of humans walking the earth who were fundamentally structurally decoupled from the divine light.
A stealth lineage. But the source material outlines something far more intense than just a family that, hands down bad traditions. Dr. Waleed claims that this lineage represents a literal genetic and cognitive hybridization between the fallen angelic entity Iblis and the decoupled prophet Israel.
This is where the physics of decoupling meets genetics in Dr. Waleed's theory. Because Israel adopted the laws of Iblis and specifically altered the laws of human reproduction, the very boundaries meant to protect the human vessel. Dr. Waleed posits that a spiritual and potentially physical intermingling occurred.
The guardrails were down.
Exactly, the barriers were dropped. The result of this Iblis-Israel hybridization is a specific, corrupted offshoot of humanity.
And the ancient texts give a very famous, very apocalyptic name to this hybrid lineage, a name that usually conjures images of mythical, monstrous hordes locked behind an iron wall at the edges of the earth.
The Gog and Magog, or, in the original Arabic, Al-Majuj.
So, Dr. Waleed is essentially describing a cosmic sci-fi scenario hiding in plain sight within the scriptures. It is a stealth hybridization program where a spiritual virus is passed down through DNA. Gog and Magog aren't zombies waiting to break out of a mountain at the end of time. They are an active, ongoing, historical bloodline living among us.
In his framework, they are deeply embedded in human history. Dr. Waleed describes the entities produced by this cursed tree, the Gog, as fundamentally materialistic, inherently violent, and driven by an insatiable thirst for bloodshed.
Because they don't have the divine light.
Right. Because they are severed from the divine source, they can only extract energy through domination and destruction. But the truly insidious part of his theory is their camouflage.
They don't look like monsters.
They look exactly like the rest of humanity. They masquerade as faithful humans because they possess the outward appearance of the Adamic creation, and because they actively adopt the outward rituals, robes, and vocabulary of religion, they can seamlessly hide within religious and political institutions.
There are the encased hearts mentioned in the texts.
Yes, exactly.
They have the outward biological shell of a human, but their internal resonant chamber is wrapped, it's deadened, it's entirely different.
If we connect this to the broader sweep of human conflict, Dr. Waleed's explanation of why this vision is such a trial becomes glaringly clear. Grasping this concept shatters all traditional myths of ethnic superiority, tribal chosenness, or standard political history.
It redefines the whole board.
It reveals that the true historical conflict is not about borders, resources, or differing philosophies. It is a biological and spiritual war for cosmic survival. On one side is the pure Adamic lineage, which naturally seeks connection and resonance with the divine.
And on the other side?
On the other side is the Iblisian Israelite hybrid lineage, the cursed tree, which seeks to spread its decoupled frequency, alter the laws of pure humans, and drag the entire species into the static.
Have you ever looked at the constant cycles of violence in history? You know, the systemic corruption of seemingly pure religious movements, the seemingly endless capacity for organized human cruelty, and wondered if there's a deeper, almost systemic root? If we look at history through Dr. Waleed's lens, it isn't just human nature being flawed. It is a deliberate, parasitic, hybrid lineage acting upon the human race.
It's a staggering proposition that reframes every historical atrocity. And it immediately demands a follow-up question, right? If this parasitic lineage has been operating stealthily throughout history, continually altering laws and spreading this decoupling virus, what is the divine countermeasure? The source cannot simply allow the frequency to be entirely jammed.
So what does this all mean? Which brings us to the mechanism Dr. Waleed calls the system reset. If Israel introduced the dampening virus, Dr. Waleed explains the historical mission of the Prophet Muhammad as the deployment of the ultimate correcting antivirus.
In conventional Islamic theology, Prophet Muhammad is viewed as the final messenger, bringing the ultimate revelation, the Quran, to correct the moral and theological deviations of past communities.
Right.
Dr. Waleed takes this foundational belief but makes it much more mechanical, physical, and targeted.
He focuses heavily on the specific Quranic title given to the prophet, the unlettered prophet, or the Ummi prophet. Usually that is interpreted simply to mean Muhammad couldn't read or write, which serves to emphasize the miraculous divine origin of the complex Quranic text.
That is the standard interpretation.
But in a framework all about altered laws and corrupted architectural blueprints, unlettered has to mean something else entirely.
It changes completely.
Yeah.
In Dr. Waleed's theory, unlettered means he was untainted by the corrupted letters, the false laws, the twisted theology, the demonic magic of decoupling that has been instituted by the prophet Israel and propagated over centuries by the scribes of the cursed tree.
He was a clean slate.
Yes, he was a biologically and spiritually pure vessel, a perfectly tuned Adamic receiver, entirely unprogrammed by the corrupted software of the existing religious establishments.
So what does that mean for his actual historical mission? Dr. Waleed describes his job as lifting the burdens and shackles placed upon humanity.
And Dr. Waleed is exceedingly literal about what those shackles are. They are not metaphorical burdens of sin or generalized guilt. They are specifically the false dietary and reproductive laws that Israel had invented to replace God's original parameters.
The 11 and 13.
Exactly. Remember those 11 dietary and 13 reproductive prohibitions? The cursed tree lineage had flipped them. They made the pure forbidden to starve the Adamic humans of divine light, and made the impure permissible to drag people down into their deadened frequency.
So Prophet Muhammad's mission wasn't just to preach a new book of moral guidelines. He had to execute a literal system reset.
A hardware reboot, almost.
Yeah. He had to explicitly, legally, and physically repeal the false laws of Israel and reinstate the original divine laws of resonance. He was deploying a targeted antivirus to purge the Israelite magic that had deeply infiltrated and corrupted human, biological, and spiritual society.
He was breaking the dampening field. By returning humanity to the correct laws of consumption and reproduction, he was physically and spiritually retuning the human vessel back to the divine frequency. He was restoring the acoustics of the human soul that Israel had sabotaged.
And there is a crucial geographic component to this reset as well, according to Dr. Waleed's text. It wasn't just about changing laws in the abstract, it was about reclaiming physical space.
Yes, the concept of the sanctuary. Dr. Waleed points out that a major physical aspect of this reset was to cleanse the holy sanctuary, which he identifies as Jerusalem, or Baka, from the impurity of the cursed tree.
Because they were squatting there.
Right. The physical presence of this hybrid, decoupled lineage in the sacred spaces of the earth was a literal contamination of the network's central nodes. The reset meant driving that deadened frequency out of the focal points of divine light on earth, restoring the proper resonance to the sacred geography.
The sheer cohesion of this theory is intense. I mean, he takes these disparate elements, obscure ancient dietary laws, geographic conflicts, the concept of a final unlettered prophet, and weaves them into a single, unified, mechanical narrative of cosmic warfare.
The internal logic is tightly woven. And what gives Dr. Waleed's work such an expansive, inescapable scope is that he absolutely refuses to limit his analysis to just Islamic texts.
He goes everywhere with it.
He argues that if this is a true universal history of the human species, then the evidence of this cursed tree and the prophets trying to expose it must exist in the bedrock of other major scriptures as well.
This is where Dr. Waleed introduces what he calls the luminous proof. He argues that the Christian texts, specifically the precise words of John the Baptist and Jesus in the Gospels, offer exact literal corroboration for the genetic and spiritual theories he extracted from the Quran.
This requires us to apply Dr. Waleed's strict literalist lens to some of the most familiar Bible verses in existence, resulting in truly jarring reinterpretations.
Okay, lay it on me.
Let's examine John the Baptist. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 3, verse 7, John is in the wilderness, and he sees the Pharisees and Sadducees, the religious elite, coming to where he is baptizing. He looks at them and calls them a brood of vipers.
Any standard commentary, any Sunday school teacher will tell you John is just calling them hypocrites. He's using colorful desert imagery to say, you guys are sneaky, poisonous, and dangerous like snakes. It's an insult, a metaphor for bad character.
But Dr. Waleed asks us a look at the precise forensic vocabulary. Brood. A brood is not a metaphor for behavior. A brood implies lineage, offspring, a literal biological genetic line. And vipers. Where do we see the serpent or the snake motif most prominently as an antagonist in these ancient texts?
Iblis, the serpent in the garden, the ultimate deceiver, the fallen entity.
Exactly. Dr. Waleed argues this is not an insult. It is a biological and theological taxonomy. John the Baptist is a prophet with clear vision. He is accurately identifying their genealogical origin.
He's diagnosing them.
Yes, he is pointing directly at the religious establishment and saying, you are the literal offspring of the serpent entity Iblis. You are the cursed tree.
That reframes that entire encounter from a theological disagreement to a prophet identifying an alien infiltration. And Dr. Waleed applies this exact same lens to the words of Jesus. In Matthew 23, Jesus delivers his blistering woes against religious leaders, famously calling them whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean.
Again, we are conditioned to read this as a brilliant metaphor for hypocrisy-looking pious but harboring secret sins. But Dr. Waleed links this directly back to the Quranic description of the cursed tree lineage having encased or wrapped hearts.
The camouflage.
Right. They have the outward, whitewashed biological shell of the Adamic creation. They look perfectly human on the outside, draped in the beautiful robes of piety. But their internal state, their core resonance, is spiritually dead, completely decoupled from the divine light. It is a literal description of their hybridized, deadened frequency.
And then there is the verse that, under Dr. Waleed's framework, acts as the absolute smoking gun. In the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 44, Jesus is locked in a fierce debate with the religious leaders, and he says to them completely flat out, you belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning.
For Dr. Waleed, this is the luminous proof to realize. This is literal confirmation from the mouth of Jesus, corroborating the exact genetic theory extracted from the Arabic texts.
Because he uses the word father.
Jesus isn't saying they're acting like the devil. He is stating a genealogical fact. You belong to your father, the devil. Iblis is the true progenitor of this specific lineage that has infiltrated the temple. They're carrying out the desires of their father because they share his decoupled frequency, his biological imperative, and his murderous, truth-dampening nature.
There is another story in the Gospels that has always baffled theologians because it seems so out of character for Jesus. He is walking, he's hungry, he sees a fig tree with leaves but no fruit, and he curses it, saying, "May you never bear fruit again," and the tree immediately withers. Why would the Prince of Peace kill a random tree? But Dr. Waleed's framework makes it click into place in a startling way.
It does. The standard interpretation is that the tree is a symbol of the nation of Israel's lack of faith. But within Dr. Waleed's highly literal framework, this event is a physical, symbolic manifestation of the larger cosmic battle against the cursed tree.
The fig tree is the lineage.
The fig tree represents this very specific hybrid lineage. It has leaves representing the outward show of religion, the camouflage, the texts they carry, but it has no fruit, no actual divine light, truth, or resonance. Jesus cursing it to wither is a demonstration of his divine mandate, actively and physically cutting off the divine light to this barren, deceptive lineage. He is engaging the enemy's dampening field.
Okay, this raises a massive, world-altering question. If we accept Dr. Waleed's premise that John the Baptist and Jesus were not just preaching general morality, but were active whistleblowers, publicly identifying, pointing fingers at, and verbally cursing this hybrid stealth lineage hiding in plain sight, does that completely recontextualize the entire crucifixion story?
Dr. Waleed's work strongly suggests that it does. Think about the mechanics of the Gog and Magog camouflage.
They need the disguise to survive.
Right. If you are a parasitic lineage that relies entirely on stealth, that survives by maintaining your whitewashed tomb disguise while manipulating humanity from within the temple, the absolute greatest existential threat to your survival is a prophet who can see through the camouflage and is publicly exposing your origin to the masses.
So silencing Jesus wasn't just a political disagreement with Rome or a theological dispute over healing on the Sabbath. According to this framework, it was a desperate, calculated, existential strike by the cursed tree. They had to destroy the whistleblower before he fully exposed their Iblisian roots, their decoupled frequency, to the entire Adamic network.
What's truly fascinating is how Dr. Waleed synthesizes these disparate scriptures into a deeply unified historical narrative. He's demonstrating that the Quran and the Gospels are not telling different stories. They're telling the exact same story about the exact same hidden enemy.
It's all the same war.
Yes. The prophets across history, from Noah to Jesus to Muhammad, are all frontline operatives in the same cosmic war, trying desperately to expose and neutralize this alien lineage hiding within the human establishment.
It is a massive, sweeping theory of everything. But Dr. Waleed doesn't stop at the canonical Bible and the Quran. He wants to prove this is a universal human trauma. He dives deep into the cosmic library of ancient, apocryphal manuscripts and even pagan mythology to trace this decoupled lineage.
Yes, to demonstrate that this luminous proof is the foundational, unrecognized trauma of the human race. Let's look at his analysis of the Book of Enoch. This is an ancient Jewish religious work ascribed to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah. It is canonical in certain ancient Orthodox churches, but considered apocryphal by most. A massive central part of the Book of Enoch is the detailed story of the Watchers.
The Watchers are essentially fallen angelic beings who descended to Earth and mated with human women, right?
Correct. The text says they produced a race of corrupt, giant beings called the Nephilim, who brought immense violence, bloodshed, and forbidden occult knowledge to Earth, ultimately necessitating the cleansing of the flood. Dr. Waleed maps this ancient narrative perfectly onto this theory.
How so?
He connects the Watchers, descending directly to his concept of Iblis and the fallen entities utilizing the physics of decoupling, and the resulting corrupt offspring. That is the exact hybridization process with Israel's earthly lineage that produced the cursed tree, the Gog and Magog. It is the same story of genetic and cognitive corruption.
What about the Dead Sea Scrolls? Those are arguably the most important archaeological find of the 20th century, shedding light on the hidden sects of the ancient world. Does Dr. Waleed find evidence of his decoupled lineage hiding in the caves of Qumran?
Absolutely. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls is a text famously known as the War of the Sons of Light against the Sons of Darkness. It describes a coming apocalyptic battle. But Dr. Waleed zeroes in on the very specific forensic language used by the Qumran community. In their scrolls, they explicitly and repeatedly curse an entity in a group they call the Lot of Belial.
Belial being a well-known ancient synonym for Satan, wickedness, or Iblis.
Exactly. The text reads, "Cursed be Belial in his hostile plan, and cursed be all the sons of his lot in their wicked conduct." Dr. Waleed argues this is not just poetic dualism or sectarian bickering. This is the Qumran community, a group isolating themselves in the desert to remain pure, literally, documenting their awareness of the exact same inherited curse, the exact same cursed tree lineage that he identified in the Quran and the Gospels.
They knew about the frequency.
It is a documented historical recognition of the decoupled frequency operating in their midst.
And he even steps outside the Abrahamic tradition entirely, doesn't he? I noted he draws parallels with ancient Egyptian mythology in the source material.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Dr. Waleed argues that the memory of this profound cosmic disruption, this introduction of the dampening frequency, was so traumatic it echoed outward into pagan mythologies. He points to the ancient Egyptian deity, Apep, or Apophis.
The snake god.
Yes. Apep was depicted as a massive serpent, the pure embodiment of chaos, darkness, and non-being, who constantly fought to devour the sun god, Ra, the ultimate symbol of light and divine order.
And Dr. Waleed identifies the serpent Apep as the early human cultural memory of Iblis, the serpent actively fighting to extinguish the light.
Precisely. And in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, There are elaborate spells and rituals explicitly designed for cursing Apep, detailing how to cut him to pieces, bind him, and prevent him from destroying the divine order of the universe. Dr. Waleed sees this as the ancient pre-Abrahamic world's desperate ritualistic attempt to deal with the exact same decoupling force that Iblis unleashed.
Bringing it all the way forward to the end of the biblical canon, he looks at the book of Revelation, the apocalyptic, hallucinatory visions of John on the island of Patmos.
Yes. Dr. Waleed quotes a very specific, heavily debated verse, Revelation chapter 2, verse 9. The text mentions a warning about a group of people who claim to be Jews though they are not, but are a synagogue of Satan.
Synagogue of Satan. Now that is a phrase that has been weaponized in horrific ways throughout recent history. But Dr. Waleed is stripping away modern political baggage and analyzing it strictly through his specific, ancient, literal taxonomy.
Right. In his framework, synagogue of Satan is not a racial slur. It is the ultimate, final, scriptural naming of the cursed tree. It perfectly literally describes the hybridized lineage.
Because they claim to be something they aren't.
Exactly. They are the ones who claim to be the pure, faithful followers of the law. They possess the outward leaves of the fig tree, the camouflage, but their true father, their true genetic and spiritual origin point, as Jesus stated, is the devil, Iblis. They are the decoupled hybrids.
I am truly marveling at the sheer, sweeping scope of Dr. Waleed's research. It is as if he is standing at a massive table, taking seemingly unrelated puzzle pieces from ancient Sumeria, the tomb walls of Egypt, the scrolls hidden in the Dead Sea caves, the canonical Gospels of the Levant, and the apocalyptic visions of Patmos, and he is showing us that they don't form different pictures.
They all fit together.
When assembled correctly, they form the exact same terrifying blueprint of this decoupled parasitic lineage operating throughout the entirety of human history.
It is a profound, masterful synthesis of ancient thought. He has effectively mapped a unified history of the curse. He posits that across all civilizations that ever touched upon a fragment of divine truth, they all invariably recorded the presence of this strange, light-stealing element.
They felt the static.
They did. They all recognized, even dimly, that something had gone fundamentally wrong in the human architectural software, and they all traced it back to this original spiritual and physical sabotage.
So let's take a breath and summarize the massive paradigm-shifting journey we've just taken through Dr. Khaled Waleed's deeply complex theories. We started by completely tossing out the childish idea of a curse as a magic spell.
Right, the whole pointing figure from the sky idea.
Exactly. We redefined it through the physics of acoustic resonance as decoupling, a literal, physical, and spiritual dampening of the divine frequency, initiated by the rebellious female entity Iblis, who weaponized the codes of creation.
And from there, we explored his radical re-identification of the prophet Israel. He separates him from Jacob, identifying him as an ancient earthly creature who was the first human to willfully decouple.
The panting dog.
Yes, the eternally panting dog. Israel altered the divine dietary and reproductive laws, the biological boundaries of resonance, to create a demonic substitute religion.
We then looked at the terrifying consequence of those altered boundaries. The cursed tree. Not a plant in hell, but a literal genealogical lineage, a genetic and cognitive hybridization of Iblis and Israel.
The origin of Gog and Magog.
Right. This produced the stealthy, violent, and inherently materialistic entities known as Gog and Magog, who perfectly camouflage themselves within the Adamic creation.
Then we examined the divine countermeasure, Prophet Muhammad's role as the system reset. Operating as the unlettered or uncorrupted antivirus, his mission was to physically purge the Israelite magic from the sanctuary, lift the false shackles of corrupted laws, and restore the original divine parameters of human resonance.
And finally, we followed Dr. Waleed as he traced the exact same narrative, the luminous proof, through the warnings of John the Baptist against the brood of vipers, Jesus exposing the whitewashed tombs and facing the ultimate consequence of whistleblowing, and deep into the cosmic library of Enoch's Watchers, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and ancient Egyptian mythology.
It is a framework that, regardless of your personal beliefs, forces an absolute and complete reevaluation of how we read history, scripture, and human motivation.
And that is the ultimate relevance to you, the listener. Whether you view these texts as literal, physical, forensic history, as Dr. Waleed argues, or whether you still prefer to see them as profound psychological metaphors, His framework is impossible to unsee.
It sticks with you.
It really does. It forces us to look at the concept of inherited corruption in an entirely new way. It demands we question the manipulation of divine truth, and it asks us to consider the unseen systemic battles driving the darker, bloodier currents of human history. It makes you realize that the historical narratives you've inherited might just be the whitewashed tomb covering a much more complex and vastly more dangerous reality.
Indeed. And I want to leave you with the final provocative thought proposed by Dr. Waleed's text, something to mull over as you process the mechanics of decoupling. Think about the famous story of the golden calf that the Israelites worshipped in the desert at the foot of Mount Sinai.
It is always presented as the ultimate symbol of sudden, inexplicable idolatry. The people panic, melt down their gold, and worship a cow.
But based on Dr. Waleed's research into frequencies, harmonics, and demonic magic, we have to ask a far more chilling question. Was that calf just a simple primitive statue made of melted jewelry?
Oh, wow.
Or was it a highly deliberate, calculated physical attempt to reconstruct the magic of decoupling? Was that calf actually a technological or occult acoustic instrument designed specifically to resummon the deadened frequency and manifest the presence of Iblis on Earth, right there at the foot of the Mountain of Revelation?
Wait, if it wasn't just a statue, but a machine designed to tune into that dark frequency to jam the divine signal, that changes everything about the Exodus story. That is something that will definitely linger with me. We have only scratched the surface of Dr. Waleed's work today. Keep questioning the narratives you've inherited. Keep looking for the underlying codes, and always ask who might have altered the blueprints. Until next time, keep diving deep.